Greetings. I'm Josh Tyson, co-author of Age of Invisible Machines, the first best-selling book about conversational AI. Age of Invisible Machines explores the learnings of industry veteran and OneReach.ai CEO Rob Wilson. Each week, Rob and I bring in a guest to continue the conversations we started in the pages of our book. This week on the Invisible Machines podcast, we're going to demonstrate the role that conversational AI can play in mental health, how the process of journaling can be enhanced by large language models, and how a flexible approach to building conversational experiences can reach users wherever they are. Our guests are Daniel Lametti and Joanna Cook. Dan is an associate professor of psycholinguistics at Acadia University in Nova Scotia, Canada, and is also the director of academic fellowships at OneReach.ai. Dan holds a PhD in experimental psychology from McGill University, and he taught and conducted research at the University of Oxford. Joanna is a PhD candidate in experimental psychology at University College London, where her work focuses on decoding language biomarkers relating to mental health. She is also a data scientist at Compass Pathways. Joanna's submission to OneReach.ai's academic fellowship program involved creating an advanced chatbot on the Telegram app that collected journal entries from participants, either as written text or as voice notes. Along with reminding people to make their daily entries, this bot also provided certain participant groups with weekly summaries of their entries using generative AI. Dan and Joanna joined Rob and I back in November of 2023 to walk us through the experience and deliver some of their findings. This is an exploratory episode of Invisible Machines, and I encourage listeners to give it a watch on the Invisible Machines YouTube channel to see these demos in action. Invisible Machines is produced in partnership with OneReach.ai. Their Generative Studio X platform is the only orchestration platform that's been named a leader by every major analyst group. Enterprises and other organizations are already using GSX to create technology ecosystems where they can grow their own digital teammates, called intelligent digital workers. These IDWs can be set to work with hundreds of customizable skills utilizing GSX's no-code building tools. Head to OneReach.ai to test drive an IDW and experience the next phase of generative AI. All right. Well, Dan, welcome to the podcast. Great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me back.
And Joanna, it's wonderful to meet you and welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here as well.
Hi, thank you.
And Rob, pleasure as always seeing you.
As always.
I thought to kind of start us off, Dan, maybe you could talk a little bit about the academic fellowship program, but I'd really love to hear maybe kind of your backstory, like what got you interested in conversational AI and led you kind of to the program. I'd love to hear a little more about that.
So I should say, I'm an academic. I study the psychology of language, psycholinguistics. My specialty is not conversational AI. It's experimental phonetics, so how we produce and perceive speech. And about 2 years ago, I was talking with a colleague at University College London, Jeremy Skipper, about a study he wanted to run involving experience sampling. So I'm not sure if you've heard of experience sampling before, but the idea is that it's a paradigm, a method of collecting data from research participants throughout the day as they're going about sort of their daily routine. And psychologists have used this method to gain insight into like what people are thinking about during the day.
Like birds chirping.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, Jeremy's interest in this method is from the standpoint of studying like our internal monologue. So like the thoughts sort of running through our heads, while we're going about our daily routines, with an aim to sort of link this to mental health in some way. Traditionally, this method, and there's like a long history of experience sampling in psychology. Traditionally, it involved like in the 70s and 80s, people would wear pagers and the pagers would go off at random times throughout the day, and they'd sort of frantically scribble down like everything they were thinking about at that time. Then the internet came along, And this enabled, experience sampling via the web, via smartphones. And so I was talking to Jeremy about this project, very interested in being involved in it. And I sort of knew that Elias, has done some work with conversational AI. And I sort of thought that maybe there was a nice connection here, a way to use OneReach to do experience sampling. This project led to the idea of, why don't we not just use conversational AI for this particular study, but for lots of different studies in psychology, in linguistics, in computer science. There's so much you can do with it, so much you can do with the OneReach platform in terms of connecting with research participants. And so that led to this idea to start an academic fellowship where we give academics like Joanna the platform to build a bot to basically run a study with conversational AI. And so we have a number of projects happening right now. Joanna's is one of them. And I guess we'll talk about Joanna's journaling bot in a second, but various studies going on looking at how people interact with AI. In one case, we have research participants interacting with GPT-4, and we've given it specific personalities, like we've told it to be, depressed or anxious or happy. And we're just seeing how these personalities influence the conversation.
So Dan, what you mentioned that there were a number of applications to the fellowship program. What drew you to Joanna's proposed research?
Yeah, so this was sort of Joanna's study was sort of like what launched everything. Joanna is using effectively a form of experience sampling. Journaling is just, it's a way of sampling experiences, at a set time every day. And this project sort of grew organically. We were trying to build an experience sampling bot, and we just kind of thought like, well, there are many benefits to journaling, to just like thinking about your day and, reflecting on what you've accomplished and how you're feeling. Maybe we can use conversational AI to facilitate this process in some way. And, by extension, help people journal, help potentially their mental health. And, we wanted to, because we're scientists, we wanted to design a study to actually like test this idea. The whole idea here is that we want to make journaling more engaging, right? Because the problem with journaling is that people don't keep it up. It does have all these known benefits, but it's hard to sort of get people into the routine of actually thinking about their day and recording their thoughts. And so we wanted to see if there was a way that we could use conversational AI to sort of facilitate the journaling process.
Yeah, how did that factor into the design process, Joanna? It sounds like maybe that was one of the initial challenges you were trying to solve, was how to get people to engage regularly with the journaling process?
Yeah, I think that's a good place where we can start thinking about it. I think with experience sampling and in general every kind of interaction that we require any study participants to do from their homes, from their work, from somewhere else than the doctor's office or the hospital or like wherever they are, or the university clinic, it's difficult to get them to actually do that. And it kind of makes sense. We are in some sense interfering with their day. Sometimes they're busy. So I think that the general consensus is that what we call adherence, so that adherence is quite low, meaning the dropout rates are quite high. So we're, I think one of the ideas that we tried to implement here was to offer them something beneficial for them, some kind of personalized aspect to it as well, to create this tool that, it has many sides to it. One side is the participant facing, where they can submit their journaling entries, and then also for us to actually be able to do some meaningful analysis on language, try to find some linguistic markers of mental health. For that, we need the complete data set to be in place. So the personalized feedback that we have introduced into this bot is basically a large language model, specifically GPT component that, based on the participant entries, speaks back to them, offering them a personalized summary of their entries. So it's like a narrative story that they receive about their days, about their weeks, that gets told back to them and allows them to reflect on their experience from a slightly different perspective than just, reading their own entries.
One of the things we had to think about was just like what communication channel to use for the bot. And we ended up going with Telegram because it's fairly easy to build bots in Telegram, and many people have it. We thought about WhatsApp, but WhatsApp is very tightly controlled by Facebook in terms of what you can build in it, whereas Telegram is wide open. And so we ended up with the journaling bot. It lives on Telegram, and you simply need the Telegram app, and you can install the bot on your phone and set it up to send you notifications at a time that you choose to journal and get summaries of your entries.
Yeah.
So this is just a video that Joanna recorded, screen recording of the journaling bot in action. And I believe this is just the sign-up process here.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just clicking through the sign-up process when the participant finds the bot on Telegram and decides to connect with it. And these are just the messages that accompany the sign-up process. It's actually pretty quick. We'll go through this now and also see the first journaling entry submitted.
One challenge we had with this was getting the correct time zone. Time zone is so challenging. With Telegram, they're so concerned about privacy that you can't get that directly from users. So you have to ask for a location, and then based on the location that users indicate, we use GPT to basically find the time zone. And it's pretty good at doing it. We have a version that's sort of built, trained on just finding time zones based on locations. Another aspect of the bot, which I think is cool, is that you can record voice notes instead of like typing out entries. And it gives you a transcription of the voice note after you record it. So you can see what you've recorded and modify it if you want to.
Yeah.
How many participants are using voice notes? Do you have a sense, Joanna?
Yeah, so I think that right now it's a bit of a mix. So some people use them sometimes, some people never use them. I think we still have more people who are using the written entries, but I think about a third maybe are voice notes. So it's really great that we can allow this option for those entries that probably wouldn't happen if they basically didn't have the voice recording opportunity at that time.
Well, yeah, Joanna, you mentioned linguistic markers of mental health. So I guess that also opens up a bunch of other potential markers, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that when we think about those kinds of markers, what we mean by that are some unique elements of the way that people speak that could be used to help us understand better how this person is feeling. And I guess they're typically split into those two main categories. One of them is the acoustic markers. So everything that we can capture from the actual tone of voice. There's actually quite a few different features that can be extracted, and there are studies that have shown that differences in those features can correlate with better or worse mood and perhaps even some more defined mental health conditions. That's one thing, and that's not even thinking about what the person is actually saying. And then you can take this other side into account as well and think about the content. So then I guess the transcriptions are enough. But obviously, joining these two together can lead to a more powerful prediction model that would, for example, be very useful in trying to predict how someone is feeling, maybe expecting a relapse, with their depression, or just in general, like making sure that we somehow can check in on that person, thinking about these tools as therapeutics in the real world. So I think there's quite a lot of value in that as well.
Yeah, it seems like with mental health, one of the biggest values is like catching people before they're being affected or the symptoms are severe, right? Because that's like the moment you can reason with them, and they're probably in a better place to avoid. It's that whole like easier to avoid something than to fix it once you're in it. And so if there's these like subtle leading indicators that could address avoidance of circumstances that would trigger episodes or whatever, it's better to catch somebody in a healthy state of mind to avoid it than to catch them during it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's even easier to think about that in the context of the more serious mental health conditions, like, for example, with people who are at high risk of developing psychosis or schizophrenia. Like, if we could intervene earlier and, for example, find resources for that at-risk population to direct them to some therapy that has, through some other studies, been shown to be effective, but only if you use it in the early days. Then, like, this is kind of linking creating the bridge between these two kind of separate areas of studies. One showing that intervening early is always beneficial, and now I guess these kinds of experiments provide us hopefully with the tools that allow us to understand who can most benefit of those early interventions.
And I think Joanna's project demonstrates sort of the right way to use conversational AI in healthcare, which is, collecting data, feeding that data to healthcare practitioners, right? Like, I don't really see a future where your psychiatrist is a bot. That just doesn't seem like something that's reasonable to me. And I don't think we'll ever have, AI that we would view as good enough to like actually play that role.
Yeah.
But using AI to interface with patients, to interface with research participants, to collect data, to look for markers of mental health decline or other illnesses, and then feed that data to healthcare professionals, like, to me, this is like the best way to use this tool. We have a video here of a summary. Is that right, Joanna?
Yeah, that's right. That's just a sample summary.
And in this study, we actually have 3 different groups of participants. I believe one group does not get a summary. Is that right?
Yep.
And then 2 others get different flavors, different kinds of summaries. One is more sort of emotional in terms of the content it emphasizes, and the other is more cognitive.
And Dan, I remember when you shared some of this stuff internally, it was pretty remarkable, some of the reactions people had to those summaries, right? Like, there were participants who had archived them because they were so powerful, and they also kind of, it was almost like they digested the person's feelings and presented them anew, and then that became the truth in a way, right? Like, so if there are things you've been telling yourself that are having a negative impact on your mental health, and then suddenly some of those ideas are reframed and shown to you in a different light, like, that can actually impact how you feel about those experiences in yourself, I guess. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We've gotten some really positive feedback from the participants who are getting these summaries, and it's really encouraging. And as you say, Josh, it's like they're getting the summary is reframing their own experiences in a more positive way, and then they kind of accept that reframed version of their lives, which is awesome. Because, the hardest thing to do is to sort of step outside of yourself, right, and look at your experiences, your thoughts from a new sort of perspective or angle, and this bot is helping them do that. And it seems to be, a positive experience, at least from the participants we've heard from.
It's fascinating too. It feels like human in the loop. There's an opportunity for like a mental health care provider, for instance, to have a really profound role in this kind of scenario where maybe you have a patient who you only see once a week or once every couple of weeks. It's going to be really hard for you to track their mental state just based on those brief interactions. But if you're working in conjunction with an IDW like this, where it's not only is that person feeling comfortable because they're maybe sharing things with the IDW that they wouldn't necessarily want to share even with their therapist, and that would be okay. Like they can be more free and open with this non-judgmental machine. But then, based on some of those linguistic markers or other contextual clues, the system could provide the mental health care provider, the human in the loop, with a framework for making a decision around this person's mental health. Like it would be able to say, I think this person might be on the verge of an episode because of like certain things they said. It wouldn't even have to necessarily reveal things that the patient would maybe prefer to keep in the context of their journal. But it would still be able to essentially like make a better, more informed decision on their patient's behalf.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I always try to think about this too as like we have now the patient or participant facing side of the tool, and it would be really nice at some point, especially when we have some findings about those linguistic biomarkers, if we are able to have the clinician-facing side of the tool, which is integrated to the same database system, and then before the visit, the therapist can have a look at this, let's say, dashboard, and then they'll have a little diagram, and they will see, okay, like, for example, on Wednesday, you felt a bit better than other days. That can be a good conversation starter with the patient, not necessarily trying to, like, project that, like, okay, you had a really bad week, but, like, also noticing the little small changes that can actually help the therapist to, like, work with the patient to pay more attention to the better moments, because even people who are very depressed, it's not always like, -10 mood every single moment. Like there are those better moments, but you just don't notice them so much. But when you have this big kind of context of it, I think, that could be really helpful. It's kind of what therapy does already anyway, but it's trying to provide some actual data for the therapist to feel more confident in their decisions.
It's great what you guys are doing. I think the implications are so vast. This is just like one, there's like a point where you just don't have enough time and I guess AIs to test all the things you could be testing right now in all the different areas, But it's cool.
And Dan, it was really cool. I think I mentioned earlier that you shared some of this work internally, and the reaction of a lot of the developers that were in on the meeting and people who work on this platform every day was that they were very inspired and invigorated by this work, because I think, they're used to doing a lot of work around business use cases. So it was really exciting for them to see that a lot of these same tools can have this really powerful application outside of, or in other settings. So
yeah,
for
really,
sure.
Really cool.
And the data is still coming in. I think we still have people participating in the study. And so we should hopefully have sometime next year a paper. The challenge in academia is that our timelines are always like a lot slower than tech. So but I'm looking forward to.
We'll look forward to that.
Yeah, to seeing what we find here.
That's awesome. Well,
awesome.
Great
Thanks,
chat,
Dan.
guys.
Thanks, Joanna.
Yeah,
thanks for joining us, and
Dan.
thanks for this amazing project that you've shared with us. Really
Thank
cool.
you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining this ongoing conversation about conversational AI. Be sure to subscribe to Invisible Machines wherever you get your podcasts, and if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app. You can also watch these conversations on the Invisible Machines YouTube channel. This podcast is produced for UX Magazine in partnership with OneReach.ai. Over the past 5 years, our team of nearly 200 engineers, scientists, experienced designers, anthropologists, and linguists have been developing Generative Studio X, an award-winning platform that has the lone distinction of being named a leader by every major analyst group. GSX is a complete environment for hosting, creating, analyzing, and scaling your own digital teammates, called Intelligent Digital Workers. For an interactive demo of IDWs in action and to learn more about the GSX platform, head to onereach.ai. This podcast would not be possible without the hard work and dedication of executive producer Elias Parker and producer Kate Timchenko. Our video and audio editor is Michael Litvinov, and we rely on support from the marketing team at onereach.ai, including Allison Harshberger, Anastasia Nechtalio, and Vera Prokodko. Thanks again, and we look forward to connecting with you next week, right here on Invisible Machines.